Nicholas is 25 years old now, and he's fantastically healthy at the moment. He is thriving with a very interesting, fulfilling life that he loves, with a lot of interests. He has a meaningful life, and he has very good health at the moment. That said, in 2004, they told us at the hospital that he likely had 2 months to live, and he was put on the palliative care team. Our GP in Ottawa told us that he never ever expected Nicholas to come home from England, where we lived between 2011 and 2006 and 2011. So his health was extremely fragile. He's had 9 major surgeries, most of which had very significant, severe, unintended negative consequences. He has chronic pain, and he has severe cerebral palsy, epilepsy. He's non-speaking. He's tube-fed. He has Crohn's disease. He has very severe apnea, which is a combination of central apnea, which is that his brain more or less forgets to tell his body to breathe, and obstructive sleep apnea, which is the type that a lot of able-bodied people have, and they would wear a CPAP or BiPAP mask. He is not able to wear a mask. The mask wouldn't deal with his central sleep apnea anyway. So he has an awake nurse by his bedside who stimulates his face to restart his breathing when he stops breathing. And he has multiple nocturnal seizures, which need to be managed for him when he has them overnight. So he is still quite complex, but he's no longer palliative, and as far as we're concerned, his life is as perfect as it could possibly be, given where we've been and what our very dire fears and expectations were 10 years ago. He's had 76 hospitalizations, many for gastro when he was young, and then later for orthopedics and pain. We're not looking anymore for functional improvement. We certainly don't expect him to be able to have functional improvement at this point. He's largely bedridden, but we're okay with that. He's okay with that. And the combination of bed rest and the pump mean that he's a happy guy. Mm-hmm. And he lives through his computer and his, social relationships, friends and family, and so forth. When he would go in the hospital when he was small, and he was very, very ill a good deal of the time, I, like lots of other parents, would sort of plaster the room with photographs of him when he's well, because people would tend, on the basis of his very severe disability, to assume that he looks sick all the time, and that his identity is that of a very ill child who lacks capacity in every way. And that just wasn't the case at all. When he was well, he was super duper involved and, in the sit ski program, skied with us as a family. He won an award for academic perseverance at school. He wrote for the school newspaper. He just had lots, like buckets of capacity and personality too, which of course is difficult to see in anyone when they're feeling really rotten. So part of the job, my job, and that of my husband, we always felt strongly that we needed to interpret him in the best possible light to the hospital, to medical professionals, to school staff, to other kids, and even to our extended family. generally speaking, this is a huge generalization, but I would say probably to the school community, people thought I was dreaming in Technicolor with respect to how ever much Nicholas might achieve educationally. In the hospital and with medical professionals, often I was saying, there's a problem. And they would say, it's part of his disability. And I would say, no, you must fix this problem. You're not seeing it the way I see it. So that was particularly the case with pain, where I was interpreting pain. I was seeing pain. He was telling me privately that he had pain. But he was so afraid of intervention at the hospital that he would deny pain every time a medical professional asked him if he had it. So there was a big problem with respect to communicating the truth. What is the truth of his experience? And that became a huge issue for our family. His receptive language ability, I would say, is probably close to 100%. He can say yes and no. He has learning disabilities, so there are gaps in his ability to comprehend evolved or complex abstract concepts. He doesn't get sequencing, for example, and there are implications to those learning disabilities, but generally speaking, we have absolutely the kind of normal conversations that we would have with a 25-year-old or possibly someone in their late teens, given that he is not employed. Maybe our conversations are more about sports than they're more about
gossip at work.
He's not allowed to have our credit card,
right.
Which is what he asked me for right before I came to Toronto.
Right.
But yeah, his language comprehension is very, very, very good. And we've had cognitive assessments for him that range from profoundly developmentally delayed to normal intelligence. So basically, I suppose I kept most of them on file, but I never pulled them out. I always said that he's impossible to assess. His language comprehension is terrific. Let's see where that can take him. And that's what I mean about brokering the relationship between how he is able to access whatever he needs, whether it's medical or education, social programs, community programs. I will always present him cognitively in the best possible light in order to maximize his possibility of participation. He has head switches on his chair, and he has a single switch on the side of his bed. He doesn't use it, though, very much. Only he goes to it when his efforts to communicate are not being understood, and he needs to give a clue. We can't guess what he's talking about. Usually when I demonstrate how he communicates, so much of his communication is contextual. So he has limited speech. So, for example, one day he came home from school and he told me within about 30 seconds that his nurse at school, Eugenie, had called the radio station to complain about the war in Iraq. So, how did I know that? He said, he came in and he said, ha, 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 ha. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, something funny. And, yeah. And I said, what? Did something funny happen at school? Yeah. And I said, oh, so what happened? And he said, no. That means it's a girl. I said, okay, so are you talking about your sister? No. Are you talking about a girl at school? Yeah. And I said, oh, a student? No, a helper. Are you talking about Eugenie? Yeah. And he starts cracking up. He's laughing his head off. So I said, okay, what's this? And he goes, that means telephone. Eugenie called. Video. Now video, he says video. Video can mean computer, videotape.
Screen, right? Yeah.
It's back in the old days, VCR, DVD. It could even mean newspaper. It could mean letter, speaker, handheld. So you need to go through all of those choices.
Right.
Radio. Eugenie called the radio. Oh my God, what did she call about? And he's laughing his head off as he's telling me this. Jimmy, that's my husband, Jimmy. And I said, Jimmy. And he's going like this, which means wrestling. But my husband was working as the head of global security in the Department of Foreign Affairs on the war. And fighting, Jimmy, I put it together. I said, oh my God, don't tell me she called the Lowell Green show and complained about the war in Iraq. Yes! And it's sort of like Rush Limbaugh in Ottawa. And this Jamaican nurse, I could just see her doing it too. Because I knew her and I knew it. And Nicholas and I just said, oh my God, Nick, are you serious? She called. And we're laughing our heads off. So the next day, right away, I brought Nicholas to school. Hey, Eugenie, I heard you called the radio station. No way, how'd you know that? Nicholas, you've been telling tales and all this kind of stuff. And it was just absolutely hysterical. She could not believe that he told me that. But it was easy.